Welcome to the Unveiled Epic Echoes channel. Today, we're diving deep into an unexplored historical mystery. In the shadowed annals of 1683, where the mists of time cloak the brutal clash of empires, there lies a tale not often whispered in the halls of history books, a story of forgotten knights and hidden prophecies that turned the tide of Europe against an unstoppable invasion. Picture the vast plains of Austria, where the summer sun hung low over Vienna, a city of spires and secrets, besieged by the mighty Ottoman forces under the command of Grand Vizier Pasha, whose armies stretched like a dark sea across the horizon, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, their tents a labyrinth of silk and steel, echoing with the calls of muezzins and the sharpening of scimitars. But beneath this grand siege, unknown to the chroniclers of the age, wove a thread of ancient mystery, a relic from the lost days of Byzantium, said to hold the power to shatter armies or bind fates, guarded by a clandestine order of scholars who had fled the fall of Constantinople 2 centuries prior, their knowledge buried in crypts beneath the city's walls, waiting for the right soul to unearth it. Enter I, the Holy Roman Emperor, a man of pale complexion and weary eyes, ruling from his opulent palace-turned-fortress, where the air grew thick with the scent of gunpowder and desperation as the Ottoman cannons pounded relentlessly, cracking the stones that had stood since Roman times, while his courtiers whispered of doom but harbored a secret alliance, not just with the Polish king, but with a shadowy figure known only as the Echo Keeper, a descendant of those Byzantine guardians, who appeared one foggy night in the emperor's chambers, cloaked in midnight velvet, bearing a map etched on vellum that revealed hidden tunnels snaking under the besieged city, tunnels that led to a forgotten chamber housing the relic of echoes, an artifact rumored to amplify the cries of battle into a force that could demoralize even the fiercest warriors. As the story unfolds, we meet, not the storied King John III of Poland yet in our tale, but a young knight in his retinue, a fictional hero born of the mists, with hair like burnished copper and eyes that held the storm of the orphaned in his youth by raiders from the east, raised in the shadowy monasteries where monks taught him not only the art of the saber, but the ancient runes of forgotten Slavic gods. Runes that whispered prophecies of a great ambush, where 18,000 knights would descend like avenging spirits upon the invaders. Carried a burden, a locket from his mother containing a shard of the very relic the Echo Keeper sought, a piece that hummed with otherworldly energy when danger neared, guiding him through the fog of war. Meanwhile, across the lines in the opulent tent of the Grand Vizier paced with the confidence of a conqueror, his beard oiled and his robes embroidered with golden threads depicting the triumphs of the magnificent. But to him, a spy lurked in his midst, a woman named, disguised as a eunuch's servant, her true identity that of a captured European noblewoman turned double agent, her heart torn between loyalty to her Ottoman captors who had shown her mercy and the pull of her Christian roots. And it was who first overheard the whispers of the relic, pieced together from captured prisoners' tales, igniting in her a quest to possess it for her own ends, perhaps to broker peace or to claim power in a world that had stripped her of both. As the siege dragged on through the sweltering July days, Vienna's defenders grew gaunt, their rations dwindling to moldy bread and brackish water, while outside the Ottomans mined beneath the walls, their sappers like moles in the earth, planting explosives that shook the ground like distant thunder. But emboldened by the Echo Keeper's revelations, sent secret missives via carrier pigeons to King, our historical John III, pleading for aid, and in the Polish camps far to the north, the king his winged hussars. Those legendary knights armored in plates that gleamed like eagle feathers, their lances tipped with destiny, but in our hidden narrative was chosen for a perilous mission: to infiltrate Vienna through the ancient tunnels, retrieve the full relic of echoes, and unite it with his shard, unleashing its power in the coming battle. The journey began under a moonless sky, slipping past Ottoman patrols with the stealth of a wolf, his horse's hooves muffled in cloth, the air heavy with the scent of pine from the Vienna woods that bordered the siege lines. And as he descended into the tunnels, guided by the locket's glow, he encountered visions, ghostly apparitions of Byzantine emperors, their voices echoing forgotten truths about a pact made centuries ago between East and West, a pact broken by greed that had cursed the lands to endless war. And realized the relic was no mere weapon, but a key to mending that fracture, if only it could be wielded by one pure of intent. Deeper in the labyrinth, he met the Echo Keeper face to face, an elderly man with skin like parchment and eyes that seemed to hold the stars of antiquity, who revealed that the relic was forged in the fires of Mount, infused with the essences of saints and sultans alike, capable of amplifying not just sound, but the very emotions of the battlefield, turning fear into rout or courage into legend. But treachery loomed. Having followed clues from intercepted messages, emerged from the shadows, her dagger drawn, her eyes flashing with a mix of desperation and desire, confessing her dual life and begging to let her take the relic too, promising it could end the siege without further bloodshed. But sensing the locket's warning hum, refused, leading to a tense confrontation where words turned to blows in the dim torchlight, agility matching his strength until a collapse in the tunnel separated them. Leaving with the relic, but haunted by her plea. Emerging back into the world above as dawn painted the sky in hues of rose and gold, rode hard to rejoin the Polish forces, the relic secured in his saddlebag, its power already stirring as distant trumpets signaled the arrival of the Holy League's reinforcements. 18,000 knights strong, gathering on the hills overlooking Vienna, their banners fluttering like wings in the breeze. King, a towering figure with a mustache that curled like a lion's mane, clasped shoulder, unknowing of the relic but sensing the fire in the young knight's eyes. And as the Ottoman lines stretched thin from months of siege, the stage was set for the most brutal ambush Europe had ever witnessed. The tension built like a storm cloud as the knights waited in the forested slopes of their horses stamping impatiently, the air alive with the chirp of birds oblivious to the carnage to come, while below, confident in his impending victory, ordered a final assault on the weakened walls, his janissaries charging with cries that echoed across the valley. But then the twist, having survived the tunnel collapse, returned to the vizier's tent not as a traitor but as a harbinger warning of the relic's power, but blinded by hubris, dismissed her as mad, ordering her imprisoned, only for her to escape in the chaos and ride toward the Christian lines, her heart finally choosing sides. As the sun climbed higher, gave the signal, and the winged hussars thundered down the slopes, 18,000 strong, their wings, great feathered appendages attached to their backs, creating a terrifying whoosh that mimicked the sound of eagles diving, but amplified 1,000-fold by the relic that now held aloft, its energies weaving through the ranks, turning the knights' battle cries into a sonic wave that shattered Ottoman morale, causing horses to rear and soldiers to clutch their ears in agony. The ambush was merciless, the knights crashing into the flanks of the invaders like a tidal wave of steel, lances piercing through armor, sabers flashing in the sunlight. The ground soon churned to mud with blood, as hidden elements unfolded. Forgotten Ottoman deserters, guided by ancient maps similar to the Echo Keepers, turned against their own, revealing supply lines that the knights severed, starving the army of ammunition mid-battle. Amid the melee, confronted Selite guards, the relic glowing brighter, unveiling visions to all nearby of the broken pact from antiquity, showing sultans and emperors shaking hands in unity, a truth so profound that many Ottomans laid down arms, whispering of curses lifted. But plot twists deepened, appeared on the field, fighting alongside, revealing she was no mere noblewoman but the last descendant of a Byzantine princess, her blood tied to the relic, and together they activated its full power, not to destroy but to echo a call for retreat, saving countless lives on both sides. The climax roared as charge broke the Ottoman center, fleeing in disgrace, his dreams of conquest crushed under the hooves of the knights. The invasion halted in a day of brutal glory, 18,000 warriors etching their names into eternity. In the aftermath, as smoke cleared and the wounded cried under a setting sun, and stood atop the relic humming softly, its secrets now shared, forging a hidden peace treaty whispered only in shadows, ensuring that the truths of ancient pacts would guide future alliances, forgotten no more. Vienna rejoiced, bells tolling in triumph, but the true victory lay in the discovery of unity amid division, a mystery unveiled that soothed the scars of war. In the fatting light of a September evening in 1683, as the sun dipped below the jagged silhouette of the hills overlooking Vienna, the air hung heavy with the acrid tang of gunpowder and the distant rumble of cannon fire that had echoed relentlessly for months, a symphony of destruction orchestrated by the vast Ottoman army encamped like a living shadow across the plains, their tents a sea of crimson and gold billowing in the wind, while inside the besieged city, the streets of Vienna, once alive with the chatter of merchants and the aroma of fresh-baked bread from Habsburg bakeries, now reeked of despair and disease, walls cracked and crumbling under the ceaseless barrage, defenders gaunt and hollow-eyed, rationing the last scraps of horseflesh and rainwater collected in battered helmets. Yet amid this chaos lurked a hidden thread of ancient enigma, a forgotten artifact whispered about in the dusty tomes of Byzantine exiles, the Echo Stone. Said to be a crystalline relic unearthed from the ruins of an older empire, capable of harnessing the very vibrations of the earth to amplify sounds into weapons of psychological terror, guarded by a secretive brotherhood who had smuggled it through the centuries, from the fall of Constantinople in 1453 to the crypts beneath Vienna's Stephen's Cathedral, where it lay dormant, awaiting a convergence of fates that would either save Europe or doom it to subjugation under the Crescent banner. Emperor I, a man of scholarly bent with a high forehead and a perpetual furrow of worry, paced the dimly lit chambers of his makeshift command post in the palace, his velvet robes frayed at the edges from weeks of siege, surrounded by maps yellowed with age and advisors whose voices cracked with fatigue, debating the merits of surrender versus a desperate holdout, but clung to reports from scouts of an approaching relief force, led by the indomitable King John III of Poland. A warrior king whose mustache rivaled the wings of his famed hussars and unknown to most, had dispatched a covert emissary, a Jesuit priest named Father Elias, to retrieve the Echo Stone, believing it to be a divine instrument sent by Providence to turn the tide. For legends spoke of how it had once shattered the walls of a forgotten Persian fortress with nothing but the echoed prayers of monks. Far to the north, in the rolling hills of Poland, his forces, his voice booming like thunder across the assembled ranks, 20,000 strong, including the elite winged hussars, those legendary knights armored in gleaming plate with great feathered wings strapped to their backs, designed not just for intimidation, but to create a whooshing roar as they charged, breaking enemy morale before the first lance struck. And among them rode our fictional protagonist, Captain Merk, a battle-hardened hussar with scars mapping his broad shoulders like rivers on a map, his eyes the color of storm clouds, haunted by a personal secret. He was the unwitting bearer of a fragment of the Echo Stone, embedded in the hilt of his ancestral saber, passed down from a Byzantine ancestor who had fled the sack of 1453, and this shard hummed faintly in his grip during moments of peril, guiding his strikes with uncanny precision. A mystery he attributed to luck until a dream vision revealed its true nature, urging him toward Vienna where the full stone awaited reunion. Meanwhile, in the opulent pavilion of Grand Vizier Pasha, a man of ruthless ambition with a beard like coiled serpents and eyes that pierced like daggers, the air was thick with the scent of incense and roasted lamb, as he plotted the final assault, his janissaries, elite infantry trained from youth, sharpening their yataghans, while engineers burrowed mines beneath Vienna's walls, packing them with black powder that would erupt like volcanoes, but harbored his own hidden intrigue. For among his captives was an enigmatic scholar, Al-Hakim, a descendant of Ottoman alchemists who had heard tales of the Echo Stone from captured European texts, believing it to be a tool of Allah to amplify the call to prayer and demoralize infidels, and he convinced the vizier to send a team of spies into the city to seize it, unaware that one of those spies, a woman named, disguised as a male sapper, was actually a double agent with ties to the Venetian Republic. Her loyalties fractured by a lost love, a Polish noble killed in earlier skirmishes, driving her to seek the stone for her own vendetta, perhaps to destroy it and end the cycle of war that had claimed her heart. As the siege wore on through the sweltering August days, Vienna's population swelled with refugees, churches packed with the faithful praying for deliverance, while underground, in the labyrinthine catacombs that honeycombed the earth beneath the city, Father Elias navigated by torchlight, his robes brushing against ancient Roman stones, evading Ottoman whose picks echoed like ominous drums, until he reached the sealed chamber where the Echo Stone rested on a pedestal carved with runes from lost languages, its surface shimmering like captured starlight, and as he touched it, a low vibration filled the air, revealing visions of past battles, the fall of Troy, the siege of Jerusalem, whispering forgotten truths that the stone was no weapon of destruction but a bridge between cultures, forged in a time when East and West traded knowledge freely, before crusades and jihads sundered them. Back on the surface, Merk and his Hussar comrades marched southward, their column a river of steel and horseflesh cutting through forests alive with the chirp of crickets and the rustle of leaves, camping under starlit skies where Merk confided in his closest friend, Lieutenant, about the saber's strange power, speculating it tied to the old tales of Byzantine wonders, while scouts brought news of Ottoman patrols, leading to skirmishes where Merk's blade seemed to sing, cleaving through armor with ease. heightening the mystery. In the Ottoman camp, infiltrated the city through a breached sewer, her lithe form slipping past guards, heart pounding as she navigated the rubble-strewn streets, witnessing the human cost, children with hollow cheeks, mothers clutching icons, stirring doubts in her mission until she encountered Father Elias emerging from the catacombs, the stone concealed in his satchel, and in a tense standoff amid the ruins of a bombed-out chapel. They clashed not with weapons but words, revealing her pain. Elias appealing to her humanity, forging an uneasy alliance when Ottoman sappers burst in, forcing them to flee together, the stone's hum masking their footsteps in echoed illusions. As September dawned, the relief army crested the hills, positioning his forces with tactical genius, infantry from the Holy League, Germans, Austrians, Saxons, engaging first in the morning mists, clashing with Ottoman in brutal hand-to-hand, the ground churning to bloody mud, while overconfident after capturing a suburb, failed to entrench his flanks, a fatal oversight rooted in his haste for glory, ignoring warnings from his generals about the approaching Poles. Merk atop his charger felt the shard pulse wildly as the hussars formed ranks, wings unfurled like angelic harbingers, and at command, they charged down the slopes in the largest cavalry assault ever, 18,000 hooves thundering like an earthquake, the wings whistling a terrifying dirge amplified by the now reunited echo stone, which Father Elias, and having escaped to the Christian lines, activated in unison, sending waves of sonic dread that caused Ottoman lines to waver, horses bolting. Soldiers dropping weapons in panic. The clash was cataclysmic, lances shattering shields, sabers flashing in the afternoon sun, Merk leading a wedge that pierced the vizier's bodyguard, confronting Al-Hakim in a duel where blades sparked, and the stone revealed a shared vision. An ancient council where Byzantine and Ottoman forebears had co-forged the relic for peace, not war, leading to a moment of hesitation that allowed Merk to disarm him, sparing his life in a twist of mercy. Fled as his army routed, leaving behind treasures including coffee beans that would birth Vienna's café culture, a lesser-known legacy, while redeemed joined the pursuit, her knowledge aiding in capturing supply trains. In the aftermath, as bonfires lit the night and victors tended wounds, knelt before the stone, pondering its mysteries, while Merk, and bound by shared secrets, vowed to hide it once more, ensuring its truths remained veiled until needed again, the battle not just a military triumph but a rediscovery of forgotten unity. Yet whispers persisted of other fragments scattered across empires, hinting at greater enigmas buried in time's sands, from the to the, waiting for future seekers. The city rebuilt, its spires rising anew, but the echo stone's legacy echoed in legends, a calming reminder that even in brutality, threads of connection endure. As the first rays of dawn pierced the veil of smoke rising from the battered walls of Vienna in that fateful September of 1683, the city awoke not to the thunder of Ottoman cannons, but to an eerie silence, broken only by the distant cries of scavenging crows wheeling over the fields where the remnants of Grand Army lay scattered like fallen leaves in an autumn gale, tents abandoned in haste, cannons spiked and left to rust, while the survivors fled eastward in disarray. Their dreams of conquest shattered by the thunderous charge of 18,000 knights who had descended from the hills like avenging phantoms. But beneath this surface victory pulsed a deeper vein of enigma, for the relic of echoes, that ancient Byzantine artifact with its crystalline heart thrumming with forgotten energies, had not merely amplified the battle's roar. It had unveiled spectral visions to those on the field. Glimpses of a concealed history where sultans and emperors had once forged alliances in secret councils beneath the pacts sealed with blood oaths to share knowledge of the stars and the earth, only to be betrayed by ambitious viziers and scheming cardinals, cursing the lands to cycles of war until the relic could mend the rift. And now, in the hands of our protagonists, it whispered of further fragments hidden across the continent, beckoning them toward a greater quest that would redefine the borders of empires. King John III, his armor dented but his spirit unbroken, stood atop the ramparts of Vienna, surveying the liberated plains with eyes that gleamed like polished steel, his great mustache twitching as he barked orders to his captains for pursuit. Yet he paused when Young approached, the relic's shard still glowing faintly in his locket, recounting the tunnel visions and revelations, prompting the king to summon the Echo Keeper from the shadows of the cathedral, where the old man emerged like a figure from a faded tapestry, his robes dusted with the chalk of ancient crypts, revealing that the relic was but one piece of a triad, the echo of voices, the echo of earth, and the echo of stars, scattered during the fall of Constantinople to prevent any one power from wielding dominion, and that clues to the others lay encoded in forgotten manuscripts smuggled to monasteries in the and libraries in Venice, setting the stage for a hidden odyssey amid the overt celebrations. Meanwhile, in the fleeing Ottoman columns, Grand Vizier rode with fury etched on his face, his once magnificent caftan torn and lashing out at aides who dared suggest retreat. But in his saddlebag he carried a pilfered map, snatched from Al-Hakim before the scholar's capture, a map that hinted at the relic's counterparts, igniting in him a resolve to reclaim glory by seeking them first, unaware that, having switched allegiances in the battle's chaos, had slipped away from the Christian lines under cover of night, disguised once more, her lithe form blending with refugees as she trailed the vizier's retinue, driven by a personal vow to prevent the relic's misuse, her Byzantine bloodline compelling her to protect the ancient balance. Back in Vienna, as church bells pealed in jubilation and citizens emerged from cellars with tear-streaked faces, offering bread and wine to their saviors, Emperor hosted a grand council in the restored halls, where tapestries depicting past triumphs hung askew from the siege's tremors, and there, amid goblets of wine and platters of roasted venison, and clasped hands, toasting the Holy League's triumph, but elevated to captain for his valor, shared hushed words with the echo keeper. Learning of a prophecy inscribed on the relic's base, a riddle speaking of mountains where eagles nest eternal for the echo of earth, and waters where merchants whisper stars for the echo of stars, prompting to volunteer for the quest, his heart stirred by the locket's persistent hum, a call he could no longer ignore. As autumn leaves began to turn the Vienna woods to shades of amber and crimson, set out with a small band of trusted hussars, including his steadfast comrade, a burly warrior with a laugh like rolling thunder and a knack for tracking through dense forests, their horses laden with provisions and cloaked in secrecy to avoid spies, riding northward into the Bohemian hills where rumors spoke of Ottoman stragglers and bandit packs preying on the war-torn roads. And it was here that tension mounted when they stumbled upon a ravaged caravan, merchants slain with curved blades, among the wreckage a cryptic amulet matching the relic's design, hinting at rival seekers already in motion. Far ahead infiltrated its camp near the Danube, posing as a healer to tend the wounded, her ears attuned to whispers of the map's secrets, overhearing plans to dispatch assassins to intercept any Christian pursuers, adding layers of peril to path, while in Venice, a subplot unfolded with a scholarly informant, Medici's distant kin, poring over illuminated manuscripts in the Doge's palace, uncovering references to the echo of stars hidden in a lagoon islet's submerged ruins. Guarded by tidal traps and illusory mists conjured by alchemical wards. The journey deepened as group crossed into the misty, peaks shrouded in perpetual fog where wolves howled like lost souls, and in a remote monastery perched on a cliffside Abbot Gregor, a wizened monk with fingers stained from copying ancient texts, welcomed them with herbal tea steaming in earthen mugs, revealing the echo of earth concealed in a cavern below, but accessible only during a lunar eclipse, which fatefully approached, building suspense as Ottoman agents, tipped by traitors, closed in. Racing against time, sent a carrier pigeon with coded warnings, her message intercepted by birds of prey but miraculously delivered by a twist of wind, alerting to the ambush awaiting in the mountain pass, leading to a midnight skirmish where sabers clashed under starlight, the relic's shard amplifying commands into echoes that disoriented foes, allowing escape with the echo of earth, a earthen orb pulsing with seismic vibrations that could quell quakes or summon them. United within a hidden glen, their alliance forged in fire, they pressed toward Venice, evading pursuits through alpine villages alive with harvest festivals, where folk tales of ghostly nights mirrored their own saga, and upon reaching the Adriatic's shimmering shores, they navigated gondolas through fog-laden canals, infiltrating the islet under cover of a masquerade ball, where plot twists revealed Senvoy already there, a cunning diplomat named who triggered the wards in greed. Unleashing floods that threatened to drown the relic, forcing and into a desperate dive, their breaths held as they retrieved the echo of stars, a celestial sphere mapping forgotten constellations that could guide armies or reveal prophecies. With the triad assembled, back in Vienna as winter's first snow dusted the spires, the relics harmonized in a ceremony witnessed by and unveiling a grand vision of peace, dissolving old curses and inspiring secret treaties that averted future invasions. The brutal ambush not an end but a beginning to mended histories, forgotten truths resurfacing like springs after drought, soothing the continent's wounds with echoes of unity. On September 12, 1683, 18,000 cavalry thundered down the heights in a single devastating raid that shattered the biggest navy in Ottoman records and saved civilization from Islamic conquest. The floor shook under 72,000 hooves as Polish wing led the most decisive cavalry assault ever recorded. In 18 minutes of pure kinetic violence, King's Remedy Force obliterated 150,000 robust siege navy that had held Vienna captive for 2 months. While the dust settled, the Ottoman Empire's 300-year growth into Europe was finished forever. Photograph this. You are status on Vienna's shattered walls on September 11th, looking 150,000 enemy warriors camped in a crescent stretching 25 round your dying city. Turkish siege weapons pound your defenses with 24 iron balls. Ottoman sappers tunnel below your feet, making ready to blow up the last intact bastions. Your garrison of 11,000 defenders has been decreased to eating leather based and rats. The Sultan's green banners flutter from positions, just 100 m out of your gates. However, here's what the Ottoman chronicles don't let you know about September 12th. Grand Vizier Ka Pasha, the architect of this siege, went asleep that night, convinced he might dine in the palace inside 24 hours. His intelligence reports confirmed Vienna's walls breached in 3 locations. His attack troops had already prepared scaling ladders for the final hurricane. The city's relief signals had long gone silent for 5 days. The arithmetic appeared impossible. To triumph over, commanded the largest Ottoman navy ever assembled for conquest. 60,000 elite fashioned the center. Slave squaddies skilled from early life who had in no way acknowledged defeat. 40,000 heavy cavalry furnished the pudding power that had terrorized battlefields for 3 centuries. 50,000 irregulars and Hungarian rebels stuffed the ranks. The Grand Vizier's non-public tent, marvelous with silk and gold, housed conflict plans for the conquest of Munich, Cologne, and, in the end, Paris itself. In opposition to this Islamic avalanche stood Remember Ernst Fahn with 11,000 exhausted defenders trapped at the back of crumbling stone partitions. The imperial garrison had been combating constantly for 59 days. Their ammunition was almost exhausted. Disorder ravaged the civilian populace. Even the rats have been eaten. Then came the message that changed the whole lot. An unmarried coded letter smuggled through Turkish traces on September 8th. 3 words in Latin that electrified the dying garrison. Video. I come, I see, I triumph over. Aye. King of Poland became coming near with 60,000 guys of the Holy League Remedy military. The Polish king had protected 315 days, marching through opposed territory even as Ottoman raiders snapped at his flanks. His force represented the biggest Christian coalition assembled since the first campaign. 18,000 Polish winged formed the devastating spearhead. 10,000 German and Austrian infantry furnished the anvil. Saxon cavalry, Imperial and Bavarian pike squares crammed. The ranks, Holy Roman Emperor IV had deserted Vienna in panic. But the Polish lion coming to complete what the Habsburgs could not. Army crested the heights on September 11th. Because the sun set at the back of them, the sight that greeted them belief. The Ottoman siege stretched like a dark ocean around Vienna's partitions. Loads of cooking fires twinkled in the collecting dusk. The crescent banners of Islam flew from positions that had been Christian territory for 400 years. The biggest military in Ottoman history lay unfold beneath them, assured in victory, unaware that dying changed into accumulating on the hills above. However, had made one deadly error in his moment of triumph. The Grand Vizier had positioned his entire force between the Danube River and the slopes. With Vienna at his again, there has been nowhere to retreat. When the Christian cavalry charged, his big navy might be trapped in opposition to the very town walls they'd spent months seeking to breach. The level was set for the largest cavalry rate in recorded records. The siege commenced at sunrise on July 14, 1683, with the thunder of 130 Ottoman cannons, unleashing hell upon Vienna's ancient partitions. Kass artillery barrage shook homes 3 miles away as 24 PB iron balls smashed into the bastions. Within hours, chunks of masonry tumbled into the moats, whilst Turkish engineers measured angles for their devastating mining operations. The Grand Vizier watched from his silk pavilion, stroking his beard as he calculated the arithmetic of conquest. 60 days, he advised his conflict council. Vienna might fall in 60 days. Through the 1-3 week of July, the Ottoman siege system established why it had conquered half of Europe. Turkish sappers, veterans of and Budapest, started out their underground warfare. They dug approach trenches that zigzagged closer to Vienna's walls, each segment covered with the aid of full of earth and stone. Behind these earthworks, marksmen with long-barreled picked off any defender who confirmed his head above the ramparts. Matter's men found out to move most effective at night time, crawling along the battlements like shadows. The real terror came from underneath. Ottoman mining corps recruited from the silver mines of Anatolia, through Vienna's clay subsoil with precision that terrified the defenders. Each underground gallery superior 20 m in step with weak, in the direction of the foundation stones of the bastions. Worked frantically to intercept these tunnels, fighting desperate subterranean battles in chambers slightly wide sufficient for a sword thrust. The sound of Turkish pickaxes grew louder every day, a consistent reminder that demise turned into digging toward them through the darkness. Here's what the Imperial Struggle Council data don't tell you about August 1683. Vienna's defenders were not just combating in military. They have been preventing time itself. The city's grain shops, calculated to feed 50,000 civilians and squatties for 6 months, faded to 3 weeks' deliver by means of mid-August. Horses died first, their carcasses dragged to mass graves beyond the cathedral. Then came the dogs, the cats. Subsequently, the rats that infested the cellars. Children with hollow eyes begged for crusts of bread that price a gold every. Disease stalked the narrow streets with more performance than Turkish bullets. Killed 200 civilians consistent with weak. Typhus unfolded through the overcrowded, where families huddled at some stage in the everyday bombardments. The metropolis's wells fouled by way of decomposing our bodies, and human waste produced water that tasted of dying. Day-by-day reviews to the absent emperor painted an increasing number of determined picture. And 15th, the enemy mines superior daily. August 22nd, our powder magazine reduced to 40 barrels. August the 30th, without instant relief, the metropolis cannot undergo beyond September 15th. Then everything changed on August 31st, while Turkish mines exploded underneath the Bastille. The big detonation hurled stone blocks 300 m into the air and opened a breach 40 m huge. Smoke and dust obscured the morning sun as 5000 surged ahead with scaling ladders and curved sabers. For 6 hours, desperate hand-to-hand fight raged inside the rubble-stuffed hole. Himself led the counterattack, his sword cutting down 3 officials before Austrian reinforcements sealed the breach with their bodies. The Ottoman self-belief grew with each passing day. Dispatched to Sultan IV in Istanbul grew an increasing number of conceited. The Grand ordered silk carpets for the victory birthday celebration in Stephen's Cathedral. His chefs organized lamb and rice for 50,000 warriors to banquet after Vienna's fall. Turkish merchants in the siege camp raised fees on slaves, looking forward to the flood of Austrian prisoners. Even the climate seemed to favor Islamic conquest, as September brought clean skies ideal for the very last attack. By way of September 8th, Ottoman trenches reached inside 50 m of Vienna's internal walls. Turkish marksmen ought to hit person. Defenders from their advanced positions. The steady crack of musket fireplace echoed through streets in which terrified civilians pressed themselves in opposition to cellar partitions. Attack troops sharpened their and checked their scaling device. The siege had ate up 8,000 Austrian lives and reduced Europe's finest castle to a hollow shell defended by walking skeletons. But refused every give-up demand. The Austrian count knew that 60,000 remedy troops were marching south through Bohemia, led by using the maximum well-known cavalry commander in Europe. His messengers had promised arrival by way of September 10th. 2 days remained earlier than Vienna's partitions crumbled completely. But as September 10th dawned without a sign of Polish banners on the horizon, even started to doubt whether salvation might arrive in time. September 10th passed without salvation. The horizon remained empty of Polish banners, as Ottoman mines exploded beneath at precisely midday, establishing a second breach that sent tremors through Vienna's cathedral bells. This time 8,000 poured through the space like a flood of steel and silk, their caps bobbing above curved scimitars as they carved through the Austrian defenders. Be counted, blood streaming from a saber cut across his brow, his ultimate 4,000 men for what all and sundry knew would be the final stand. The arithmetic of survival had come to be not possible. Every Ottoman attack wave contained greater guys than Vienna's complete garrison. With the aid of dusk on September 10th, Turkish banners flew from the outer bastions. Private, a green silk crescent moon on, changed into planted just 200 meters from Stephen's Cathedral. The Grand stood in his conquered trenches, surveying the death town through a Turkish telescope inlaid with Persian silver. His engineers suggested that one more mining operation might collapse the closing inner wall. His assault troops had already divided the loot from Vienna's church buildings and palaces. Tomorrow would convey general victory and the keys to crucial Europe. Right here's where legend meets bloodless mathematical reality. At the exact second Vienna appeared doomed, 60,000 Christian warriors were completing the maximum audacious comfort march in army records. His Polish army had included 300 in 15 days, transferring faster than any pressure of comparable size in recorded records. The Polish king drove his men mercilessly, knowing that each hour's put off meant greater Austrian blood soaking into Vienna's cobblestones. His winged rode 18 hours according to day, their distinctive feathered wings growing an otherworldly silhouette in opposition to the September sky. What occurred subsequent, every precept of Ottoman intelligence amassing. No matter commanding 150,000 men and controlling every road inside 50, scouts completely failed to stumble on Soy's technique. The Grand's attention had focused so absolutely on Vienna's crumbling walls that he not noted the broader strategic picture. Turkish patrols, drunk on predicted victory, grew careless of their reconnaissance. Now not an unmarried Ottoman officer suspected that the largest Christian army in 200 years turned into drawing near via the forests. The Polish leading edge reached the heights at dawn on September 11th, just as Turkish artillery started out its each-day bombardment of Vienna's ruins. Prince Eugenov, leading 12,000 imperial cavalry, crested the ridge first and surveyed a domain that stopped. His breath understretched the most opulent army camp in Ottoman history. Silk pavilions in every coloration protected the valley ground like a Persian garden. Heaps of cooking fires sent smoke spirals into the morning air. Horse lines stretched for containing the greatest Arabian money may want to buy. The Sultan's personal war chest, well worth 3 million gold ducats, gleamed from beneath striped awnings. However, notice something his Austrian allies missed. The Ottoman camps vary. Magnificence found out a deadly weak point. Ka had placed his whole army with their backs to the Danube River and Vienna's partitions. There had been narrow bridges across the water. If the Ottoman line broke, 150,000 men could be trapped between Christian cavalry and the city they'd spent months looking to seize. The Grand Vizier's self-belief had created the appropriate killing ground. That evening, as Turkish drums echoed victory songs across the valley, Soys amassed his battle council in a captured monastery, overlooking the Ottoman positions. The Polish king, 54 years vintage, but nonetheless possessed of the physical strength that had made him Europe's maximum feared cavalry commander, spread captured Turkish maps across a timber table. His plan became breathtaking in its simplicity and terrible in its implications. At sunrise, 60,000 Christians might assault alongside attend the front. The infantry could engage the Ottoman center, whilst 18,000 cavalry massed for the decisive blow. As midnight approached on September 11th, Soys penned his very last letter to his liked spouse Mari's inn. The phrases might echo through history. I came, I saw, God conquered. But first, God would work through 72,000 hooves, thundering down from the at-30 in step with hour. The biggest cavalry fee in history turned into 12 hours away. Sunrise broke on September 12th, with the clash of 60,000 warriors making ready for struggle. Christian trumpets sounded reveal from the heights as Polish, Austrian, and German commanders located their forces alongside a 10 front. Underneath in the valley, Ottoman drums spoke back with a thunderous reaction that shook leaves from the trees. Emerged from his silk pavilion, awaiting every other day of siege operations against Vienna's crumbling partitions. Rather, he located himself watching the biggest Christian military assembled in centuries. The warfare started out at 66 m, with Prince Eugene's Austrian infantry advancing down the eastern slopes in ideal formation. 10,000 imperial pike squares moved like clockwork mechanisms, their steel factors glinting within the morning solar. Behind them marched 8,000 German musketeers in disciplined ranks, their match cords smoking within the crisp September air. The website becomes surprising and terrifying, a river of metal flowing down the hillsides closer to the Ottoman positions. Responded precisely as Soys had predicted. The Grand Vizier dedicated 40,000 infantry to satisfy the Christian increase, assured that his numerical superiority might weigh down this relief strive like each other European expedition. Agencies wheeled into conflict strains with practiced precision, their white caps bobbing above razor sharp. In the back of them, 20,000 cavalry formed in glittering crescent, looking ahead to the instant to supply the killing blow against broken Christian formations. For 4 hours, the struggle raged across the valley floor, with neither aspect gaining decisive gain. Austrian pike squares held firm towards charges at the same time, as Turkish horse archers peppered German musketeers with lethal volleys. The conflict of steel rang across the battlefield as 100,000 men fought with professional skill and desperate braveness. Ottoman assets record dropping 3,000 guys within the morning preventing. Christian casualties established to 2,500 killed and wounded. The mathematics counseled a grinding warfare of attrition that favored the numerically advanced Turks. But right here's what Ka did not understand about's tactical genius. The Polish king had spent 4 hours positioning his enemies, precisely in which he desired them. Every Ottoman regiment devoted to the infantry battle became one less unit to be had to resist the approaching cavalry avalanche. As the clock approached 4 p.m., 60,000 Turkish warriors stood locked in combat with their backs to the Danube River, absolutely unaware that demise turned into collecting at the hills above them. Then the whole lot changed in an unmarried second that split history in 1-2. At precisely 44 p.m., 18,000 cavalry commenced the largest set-up price in recorded struggle. The floor trembled under 72,000 hooves as Polish winged led the thunderous descent from the heights. At the back of Soy's spearhead rode German, Austrian, and Saxon heavy cavalry, forming a metallic avalanche 3 huge. Picture this. You are a veteran standing inside the Ottoman front line, blooded from 4 hours of fight, however confident to your unit's field. Abruptly, the earth starts to shake. You switch in the direction of the hills and see something that defies comprehension. 18,000 armored horsemen charging down the slopes at 30-hour, their lance factors forming a woodland of loss of life. The Polish feathered wings create an otherworldly silhouette that appears supernatural in its terror. The effect speed turned into devastating past calculation. A established knight at complete gallop generates kinetic electricity equivalent to a present-day vehicle collision. While 18,000 such projectiles struck the Ottoman left flank simultaneously, physics became more lethal than braveness. The Turkish line failed to damage. It sincerely ceased to exist. Organizations that had held company in opposition to pike and musket dissolved like smoke earlier than the cavalry typhoon. Inside minutes, panic spread through Ottoman ranks like wildfire. Elite units that had never defeat broke and ran closer to the bridges. The Sultan's non-public protect, 5000 of the greatest warriors inside the Islamic global, deserted their positions without putting a blow. Its brilliant battle tent full of golden treasures and battle maps was overrun through Polish cavalry who trampled valuable Persian carpets under their hooves. The pursuit had become a massacre that lasted till darkness fell. Ottoman casualties installed catastrophically. 15,000 lifeless on the sphere. 5,000 drowned trying to go the Danube. Limitless heaps scattered across the Austrian countryside. So cavalry lost fewer than 400 men within the complete engagement. The 451 casualty ratio every principle of medieval war. As the sun set on September 12, 1683, the Ottoman Empire's enlargement into Europe became completed forever. In 18 minutes of natural kinetic violence, Soys had shattered 300 years of Islamic conquest and stored civilization from the Sultan's inexperienced banners. Whilst the guns fell silent at sundown on September the 12th, the killing ground round Vienna comprehension. Ottoman bodies carpeted the valley floor and home windows wherein cavalry had struck, creating ghastly pathways of loss of life that stretched for kilometers. Turkish horses wandered amongst the corpses, their silk-draped saddles empty, their Arabian bloodlines now serving no grasp. High-ranking passes, identifiable by their jeweled and Damascus metallic, lay twisted inside the dust along common, whose white caps were stained pink with their existence's blood. The arithmetic of slaughter instructed the tale of 18 mins that modified records. Polish cavalry, chaplains strolling the sphere with scribes, counted 20,000 Ottoman useless earlier than darkness, forced them to halt their grim census. Drowning sufferers pulled from the Danube, delivered every other 3000 to the toll. Turkish warriors who had died trying to reach the safety of the eastern shore. Prisoners numbered 15,000, including 400 officials and 3 of the Imperial Council. In opposition to this carnage, Christian casualties appeared nearly superb in their lightness. Soy's whole alleviation navy had misplaced 1,500 men, with most effective 400 cavalry deaths, no matter leading the most devastating rate in Navy history. Here's what the Imperial War Council data reveal about the instantaneous aftermath. Its amazing command tent, larger than most church buildings, fell intact to polish Howe's treasures that boggled the thoughts. The Grand Vizier's private battle chest contained 300,000 gold in Venetian cash, enough to fund a whole marketing campaign. Persian carpets well worth a king's ransom lay trampled below cavalry hooves. Battle maps displaying planned Ottoman advances to Munich and Prague have been scattered among overtoned espresso cups and deserted hookahs. The Sultan's sacred widespread, a green silk banner blessed in Mecca, became determined deserted in a puddle of spilled rose water. But the mental devastation handed even the fabric losses. For 3 centuries, Ottoman armies had advanced like an unstoppable tide, conquering Constantinople, Budapest, and reaching the gates of Vienna twice. The aura of Islamic invincibility, carefully cultivated through generations of victory, shattered like Venetian glass against Polish metallic. Surviving Turkish officials pronounced that elite devices, guys who had by no means retreated of their lives, broke and ran at the first sight of winged houses charging down the hillsides. Himself, blood-spattered and exhausted, made the choice that described his strategic genius. His nobles begged permission to pursue the routed Ottoman army to complete the destruction and perhaps seize the Grand Vizier himself. The street to Buda lay open. Turkish garrisons at some point of Hungary were panicking. A decided pursuit might have driven Islamic forces absolutely from soil within months. But the Polish king refused. Victory had taught him what defeat had not taught. Armies, even triumphant ones, reached limits of patience and supply. His cavalry horses, extraordinary in their fee, have been blown from the attempt. His infantry, although positive, had marched 300 and fought for 12 hours. Pursued into antagonistic territory ought to transform triumph into catastrophe via a single. Tactical blunders. Field had received the day. Simplest subject ought to keep it. What observed became celebration tinged with exhaustion and awe. Polish, nonetheless sporting their blood-stained wings, knelt the various corpses to offer prayers for the souls of the lifeless. Austrian infantry, men who had witnessed the not possible, sat in taken-aback silence as they wiped clean their guns. Even hardened German mercenaries, veterans of a dozen campaigns, spoke in whispers about the cavalry charge that had each law of warfare they understood. The strategic results rippled across Europe like earthquake tremors. In Paris, Louis XIV obtained information of Ottoman defeat with mixed feelings, knowing that Habsburg power could now dominate vital Europe. In Rome, Pope Innocent the Ordered sung in each church, proclaiming September 12th, a feast day for the salvation of Christendom. In Istanbul, Sultan the Obtained dispatched reporting transient setbacks and started planning the grand execution. Within Vienna's liberated partitions, Count Number and his surviving 4000 defenders emerged from their cellars like men resurrected from the useless. 2 months of siege warfare had decreased them to walking skeletons, however that they had held their posts until salvation arrived. Church bells that have been silent for 60 days rang out throughout the town, their bronze voices proclaiming that the of Islam could in no way once more threaten the coronary heart of Europe. The age of Ottoman growth become over. The tide of history had become on a September afternoon in 18 minutes of cavalry thunder. The tremors from September 12th rippled throughout the Islamic International like cracks in a shattered basis. Inside 3 months, Pasha met his destiny in Belgrade, strangled with a silk on Sultan Yavuz's direct orders. The Grand Vizier who had promised to plant Ottoman banners in Paris died knowing that his defeat had triggered the empire's irreversible decline. His execution dispatched a message of imperial fury, however it could not resurrect the 20,000 elite warriors buried in Austrian soil, or restore the air of secrecy of invincibility that had died with them. The strategic effects cascaded throughout Europe with mathematical precision. Hungarian towns that had trembled at the method of Turkish armies suddenly determined courage to withstand. Buda, the jewel of Ottoman Hungary, fell to imperial forces in 1686 after a siege that lasted just 78 days. Belgrade, the gateway to the Balkans, capitulated in 1688. The very fortresses that had anchored Ottoman power for hundreds of years crumbled like dominoes earlier than Habsburg armies, emboldened with the aid of Soy's not possible victory. Right here's what Navy historians located once they studied the struggle's tactical innovations centuries later. The Vienna rate have become the template for every hit cavalry attack that observed. Frederick the Extraordinary's Prussian at, Napoleon's heavy cavalry at, even Wellington's household cavalry at Waterloo all employed ideas that Soy's had perfected on. September 12th. Mass, momentum, and best timing may want to overcome any numerical disadvantage. The Polish king had established that 18,000 disciplined horsemen, properly led and exactly timed, possessed extra fight power than 150,000 scattered infantry. However, the mental revolution passed even the tactical breakthroughs. Earlier than Vienna, armies approached Ottoman forces with protecting mentality born from 3 centuries of defeats. After Vienna, that fear evaporated like morning mist. Christian commanders located that Turkish, for all their legendary field, could smash and run like every other infantryman when confronted with overwhelming shock movement. The myth of Islamic invincibility, carefully built through generations of conquest, may want to in no way be rebuilt once shattered via Polish wings. The cultural reminiscence of September 12th embedded itself in attention with surprising permanence. Coffee houses, the once enormously institutions, emerged from the lots of Turkish coffee beans abandoned in camp. The form to mock the Islamic crescent have become an everyday reminder of Ottoman defeat baked clean each morning. Even the Vienna's gift to European subculture celebrated the swirling motion of cavalry prices that had stored the metropolis from Islamic conquest. But perhaps the struggle's greatest legacy lay no longer in what it executed, but in what it discovered about leadership below impossible pressure. Had validated that proper Navy genius expressed itself no longer via reckless courage, however through affected person calculation blended with best timing. The Polish king had waited 4 hours even as his allies bled, looking 100,000 enemies positioned themselves exactly in which his cavalry could spoil them. Such restraint required nerves of metal and unshakable confidence in mathematical realities that lesser commanders ought to by no means grasp. The Ottoman Empire limped onward for every other 240 years, but September 12th marked the stop of its expansion and the start of its lengthy retreat. In no way once more could Turkish armies threaten the heart of Europe. In no way again could Islamic crescent fly from the gates of major cities. The tide of conquest that had swept from critical Asia to the outskirts of Vienna sooner or later broke, in opposition to Polish mettle and Austrian determination. Cutting Edge nevertheless analyzes rate as an appropriate example of operational patience mixed with tactical violence. Workforce schools from to West factor train the Vienna ideas. Soak up strain to create possibility. Mass forces on the decisive point. Strike with overwhelming attention whilst the enemy least expects it. The Polish king's 18-minute masterpiece became a template for defeating numerically advanced foes through superior timing and unbreakable subject. The silence after the final Turkish drum fell quiet on September the 12th. 1683 marked more than the quit of a siege. It introduced the belief of Islam's 300 enlargement into Europe and the sunrise of Habsburg dominance that could form the continent for centuries. 18,000 cavalry had thundered down the heights in the biggest mounted raid in recorded records, shattering an empire's self-belief in 18 mins of natural kinetic destruction. When the impossible turns into inevitable, while subject conquers desperation, while ideal timing transforms numerical weak point into overwhelming electricity, armies discover that victory belongs no longer to the biggest pressure, however to the only that chooses the ideal second to unharness hell. At Vienna, Jean Soys proved that 18,000 men with unshakable will may want to certainly overwhelm 150,000 with divided attention. In struggle, as in existence, mathematics yields to mathematics properly implemented. This mysterious journey ends here, but stay tuned for more untold stories in our next video. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new stories. Thank you and see